Hello and thank you for coming out today. We're really excited and happy for you guys to be here and for us to present to you. We are the Pythons. My name is Aaron Rakowski. I am majoring in mechanical engineering with a minor in entrepreneurship and innovation. And my role in this project was the mechanics specialist.
Hi, my name is Avery. I'm also really excited to be here. I was the story master, I was the lore master and the story weaver. And I'm going to be going into game design and CIS.
Hi, I'm Abby Denayo, and I am majoring in software development. My main role was aesthetics and the presentation architect.
I'm Charles Anquist. I'm majoring in game design and programming, and I was sort of the middleman who helped connect it all, helped everybody else wherever they needed help, and connect everybody else when they weren't understood.
He really was the gel of the project.
Glue.
All right, so should we be moving forward? Yeah.
Over the past week and a half, we've been working quite diligently on this project. It has been quite a time crunch, but we are very happy with how it turned out. We will present you with Fateless.
All right, so what is Fateless? In its most simple terms, Fateless is just about a world of manifest destiny where only you are fateless. Only you have the power to create your own fate. The setting would be in a high fantasy medieval storyline, in a high fantasy medieval setting. The world is called Celiset. It's got a procedurally generated world, and it is ever-changing and has a wide variety of landscapes. From the city of Ellisburg, which is a series of ships that form a city on the sea, to Grencourt, which is a city made out of a mountaintop. And everywhere in between, there's plenty of places that help flesh out our setting and the environment around it. There is a lot of backstory concerning the world of Fateless, but the primary events are long before our story takes place. There are a bunch of gods who rule the world in relative peace and in relative agreement. But after a long time of ruling together, they start to build up conflicts and how they want to have the world be governed. And these conflicts fester into larger disagreements and eventually into war, turning two different factions of gods onto each other, leading to a great war between the gods. The only god who abstained from this was Lucilin, the eldest god and the god of cycles and the sun and the moon, who saw no purpose in the war. All gods but Lucilin ended up perishing in the conflict, and Lucilin, angry at this, decided that no cataclysm on this scale should ever be allowed to happen again, creating the system of fate and the fate weavers, spider-like beings that orchestrate the fate of the world from a different dimension. They are omnipresent and watch over everything, weaving together a giant tapestry of humanity and everything else. Everything is bound to a degree to fate, and they are all placed on a central hierarchy, with humans being at the bottom and powerful creatures like dragons and some original creatures that we have in our world being near the top. Things at the top can go after and kill things at the bottom, but things at the bottom cannot go over after the things at the top. The central story is basically summed up by: you live in a town. You are just an average Joe, you think. Your life is peaceful and fine until one day a creature that ranks higher on the hierarchy, a drake, ends up rampaging through your town, as is fated. Tearing apart homes, splattering blood across the wall, people trample each other to try to get away from it. But you, surged on by a sudden movement of anger and destiny, decide to lunge forward and plunge your sword into it, killing it, surprising everyone around you, because that's not supposed to be able to happen. This is the central conflict of the story, finding out that you have a power that nobody else does. That's when you discover that you are fateless, though at first you would think that you were chosen by the gods, because that's usually the type of thing that allows people to go outside of fate. You go along with this for a while, going on your exploration, trying to find out your purpose, what you were chosen for, and then you meet Vele, who was actually the one who brought you into the world and orchestrated what your purpose was, and that was to have no purpose, to have no fate, to be a creature that operates completely outside the chosen binary, and would allow you to destroy the concept of fate and free everyone from its binds. She also reveals to you that you have the power to essentially usurp the last god and she ends up guiding you on your fight to ascend to godhood and fight Lucilin, ending fate. The Fateless is the chosen one. They're not necessarily chosen, as previously discussed, but they are essentially humanoid. They're not quite human. Many people in the game's lore have discussed between themselves, and the general consensus is that they're not quite human. They're more like a god in their like fetal stage. They're like the first part of like the god's life cycle. They are a completely blank slate. They're a tabula rasa, and you're able to create your own backstory for them, your own differing story about what you want your Fateless to be. They are fully customizable in appearance, so any people who prefer to have their character made by them and for them would appreciate. The Vol are creatures that have existed to help humanity in the past. They are mythical creatures with extreme magical capabilities. There are different types of Vol, and they have a lot of varying characteristics between subspecies. They were meant to serve humanity. The first section of Vol were meant to serve humanity. They are called the True Vol. They were sent by the god of magic, and they have 2 equine legs, and they look like a mortal woman with a horn and an ethereal glow. Their bodies were made out of pure magic, and when the magic ran out, they died. Humanity overused their power and ended up driving them to extinction. There are 2 other types of Vol. There are the Bastard Vol, which are half human, half Vol creatures, who are, for the most part, the same as their true counterparts, but do have different variations in the fact that their magic is usually not as strong, and the fact that their bodies are flesh and blood. Fate applies loosely to them because they were never supposed to exist. And then there are the Primal Vol, which are the rarer cousins of the Bastard Vol, which are the offspring of a Vol and a sentient beast, like a dragon, or an ogre, or something like that. And they are feral. They are usually mindless beasts. They are incredibly powerful. They're the highest ranking mortals in the hierarchy, and they're just kind of dreaded, and they're extremely rare. Violet is a Bastard Vol, and she is the strongest of her kind. She almost comes close to the power of her true ancestors, and she's the one guiding you on your quest and orchestrates everything to do with your quest.
The enemies in Celestat, there's a variety of enemies. The first major enemy being Lucilin himself, as the only remaining god that's left. He's the god of cycles and sun and moon, and he's the one who established fate and sort of rules over everything, and he has final say over everything in determining what's going to happen. He's also the creator of the Fate Weavers. And the Primal Vol. The Primal Vol are, like she said, come in many forms, such as a dragon or ogre, nagas, any mystical creature form, but they all have a distinct feature, which is a unicorn horn-esque thing that's always located on the forehead, and it's always basking in a strange glow, which differentiates them from the others of their kind. There's also fantasy creatures as your enemies, and there's dragons, drakes, worms, those being the high tier beings. There's also mid tier beings being 3-eyed wolves, naga, ogres, and those are normally the ones that you're not supposed to be able to hurt. But being Fateless, they're now your enemies, and they will target you because they sense fear towards you. And then there's the last major enemy is the Fate Weavers themselves. The spider-like beings. They have needle-like legs, which once you come across them and in their fight, they will attack you with their needle-like legs, and they will try their best to defend their fate, as is their duty.
Alright, so players will be able to do crafting in Fateless. They will be able to forge weapons and armors unique to their levels. You will be able to find these materials located in mines where there will be ores and veins, or enemies can even drop certain ores and crystals that you may use to forge. You may also build homes in Fateless. Same applies. You will have to go to a mine and find materials such as iron, steel, and craft nails, and you will have to iron fittings, hinges, locks, and then you'll also have to go and cut down trees in order to gain the material needed. To craft glass, you will have to go to a riverbed and collect sand to turn into glass at a forge, as well as you can get clay from riverbeds and turn that into brick. You will also be able to craft as well potions. Potions can be unique in their special properties depending on the plant material used as well as the crystals you find. Some are stronger than others. They will become stronger as you level up, as well as you can learn new recipes with unique properties that only you can craft.
We as the developers wanted to breathe life into the world of Celicet. Doing so, we wanted it to make it feel as real as possible. So one of the features that we added was a destructible environment. This allows the players to make permanent changes to the environment, whether it's cutting down trees, excavating the land, or destroying structures. Really, the possibilities are nearly endless for that. The other would be randomized events. Randomized events are more towards the category of weather. Now, we're not just thinking of, your rain, snow, shine, not typical weather events, but more so natural disasters. Things like earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes. Everything that can permanently change the world and make a deep impact in your playthrough and always keep a player on their toes, but also feel immersed into the world. And then finally, a procedurally generated world. This allows the players to, upon each playthrough, have a unique experience in which they can explore a new world. So instead of playing through a game, beating it, going to another game and having the same exact world you played prior, nothing has changed. With the procedurally generated world, every game would be unique, and it allows players to have that unique exploration aspect to how the world is designed. The combat system is a live action system. It allows a lot of freedom with how the player wants to fight. So, strategic minded players, for example, can make use of the dynamic environment as stated. This can be, inflicting lightning damage to a swimming enemy, or dropping a tree down on another. Really, those with the most creative minds can have a huge benefit to this aspect of the combat system. Another thing is you're able to actively strike and parry attacks. Hitting certain parts of the body will do greater damage or less, and accuracy of the attacks and the blocks are very important. Missing or grazing the target can result in either no or less damage coming from the attacks. And not only does missing yield no damage, but attacking at any point leaves you vulnerable to attacks. If you swing your sword, your arm is left open to be then attacked by your enemy. So you have to make sure every attack counts. We then want to talk about the God Power trees. Now, as the Fateless, you then take on the mantle of a dead god. However, not only are you taking on the mantle of one dead god, but three. You yourself become a one-being trinity. Now, upon leveling up, you gain a skill point, which you are able to allocate into any god skill tree of any three aspects of them. Now, every god has three aspects in which they govern. Or Dune, for example, which we gave a small skill tree example for you guys. We didn't want to make it too large, so you get overwhelmed with what you would be looking at. But he governs over forging, fire, and volcano, in which you're able to allocate your points to. Upon becoming later in the game and progressing enough, you become that trinity in which you have points invested in all three of your chosen gods.
Weapon proficiencies is the more you choose a weapon as you start playing the game, you can choose a weapon and you can change it at any time. But the longer you use a weapon, the more adept your character comes to it, the more he becomes used to using that weapon. And as you use that weapon, you level it up. And once you reach about level 10, you get to the limit of the beginner, and you have to seek out a master of the intermediate level. And until defeating him, you cannot advance any farther. You're stuck at that level. But once you defeat him, then you advance to intermediate, which then grants you more skills and more advanced maneuvers, which you can apply in combat. And once again, to level up from intermediate to master, you have to seek out a master of the weapon of your choice. So if it's a sword, you have to seek out a sword master, and you have to fight him in a duel. And they can be hidden anywhere around the world. Sometimes they might be harder to find, but they are there. And once you beat him, you become a master of that weapon. And up to level 30, which would be the max, you are the master. You can start develop your own combat maneuvers, your own combos, and you decide how you want to play your weapon a lot. You become a lot more proficient with it. But to become the best of the best with your weapon, you have to go on a quest once you're at max level. You have to go on to defeat a powerful creature, whether it be a dragon or a frost worm, something of great proportion, which would allow you to fully ascend your weapon and prove your worth, that you're worthy of the god tier of that weapon. You're worthy of the god-like powers.
Fateless has a wide variety of weapons. Here I have listed only 10, but we actually have so far a total of 28, including these pictured so far, but I'll give you some more examples, those being bladed whip, war fans, a buckler and tower shields, standard and repeating crossbows, a trident, a glaive, and many more. All of which the player is able to choose from and add to their arsenal.
Skill proficiencies. These work similar to the god power trees, in which the more you use them, the stronger they become. So as you're mining, for example, you can start investing in mining speed as you level it up. And once you invest in mining speed, then you could further down a path. Like mining speed would make it so you don't have to spend as much time mining. And then there's mining depth, which means you're able to travel farther down into the mines than before. Your body is more accustomed to the oxygen level being lower. It's harder to breathe down in depths. And you can further these skill trees as far as they go. And each time you invest a point into them, you can reinvest into the same skill, which would allow further progression with that skill. And this is not just limited to mining, it's also in gathering and many other types. Then we have key features of the game. One of the key features of the game is exploring. There's a wide world to explore. There's many things, many hidden quests and secrets throughout the world to be able to just go wander, and you could find dungeons hidden that are ancient tombs. And to explore that it's never-ending exploration. There's also crafting weapons. To further upon the key features of crafting weapons, you can craft normal weapons with materials like was earlier said, but there's also legendary fragments of the gods, in which their weapons were destroyed in that final battle, and they had been spread out throughout the world. So your chosen gods, you can have a link towards them where you can find quests that will lead you to a fragment of their weapon. And once you gather enough of those fragments, you can then proceed to forge your own weapon that's of the god tier. And then we have an adaptive storyline, in which there's no set storyline. You don't have to follow, go here, do this. You can wander as you will. Where you go, what choices you make, that will change the storyline as you go. If you go and attack a dragon, but it escapes from you as you're attacking it, then it might attack a nearby village in a rage. Then a new quest would come up where you'd have to defend that village from the attack.
So, now you're probably asking, why should we play this game? This game takes you to a new unexplored land. Nobody has ever been through this land. It is procedurally generated. There are random events, and then it's just a large map. There's caves, there's dungeons, there's villages, just a plethora of things for you to explore that will take you months rather than just hours like most games to explore. You are also able to make your own story. You have an adaptive storyline. You can make whatever choices you feel. You are not set to do just one thing. Go here, do this, complete this quest, move on, be a legendary, whatever. Your fate is not written. So that gives you the open choice of creating your own fate. You get to write your story. You are the boss of it. Nobody gets to write the story for you. And you can be your own god. You can influence the world of Celeste, whether it's for good or evil. You can crush enemies that stand in your path, whether they are innocent or evil. You truly influence this world. You can watch it bloom like a flower, or you can watch it burn in hell. It's all up to you. You can also choose to free others from their fateless. They have not had a path chosen, and that usually means they are sent to death. You can choose to save them or let them burn. It's all up to you.
For future plans, after the initial release of our game, we would hope to add a co-op version of the game in which from you and 2 to 6 players would be able to play together in a world in which you could roam together and fight bosses together, journey together, and each person playing in there would have his own effect on the storyline, and everybody would be able to change it, and every choice made by every player would make an impact upon your final destination. We also had mod compatibility, which would be server-based, based upon the host or whoever is the leader of the group, essentially. So that way you would be able to, sorry, I'm blanking. You'd be able,
The mods are constrained to the server, so that way people can't actually cheat on the server by having mods that aren't supposed to be there.
and then there's the potential for PvP, which would allow players and friends that you could play in co-op. You could then become rivals in the battle, and you could fight each other in the wilderness. You could sneak attack, or you could battle in arenas in which you would fight in a fair duel, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, or even 3-on-3, in which you can gather your entire squad and you could fight against each other and test who's truly the strongest and who has the best build.
Alright, so according to our motivation scale, we would rate our power a 9. You are able to become a god. You become the most powerful being within the game. You can destroy essentially any enemy you feel. Anything that opposes you, you can destroy it or let them live. So initially, socialization's only going to be 2. We're only going to have the followers and the groups and the communities that on our platform when it first comes out. But like he said, for future reference, when we release co-ops, then we would probably change it to about an 8, because you can invite strangers, friends, PvP. There's just plenty more open interactions for you to have. We give our exploration a 9 because our map is so large and procedurally generated. It's going to take you months, not days, not hours, to explore all these locations, if you can ever find all of them. And next, our creativity would be a 9. You are able to change your character however you like, and their appearance, their skin, their hair, their eyes, if they have scars, if they have war paint, anything that you can set your mind to, you can change on this character. And for achievement, we have rated it a 5. Because you can gain new weapons from the gods, from defeating them to show off your power. And then you can have like new skills from leveling up from skill trees. You can have more weapon proficiencies. And you can choose your own perks in a god tree, all from leveling up as an award for you leveling as far as you did. So next is platform and price. We plan to initially release our game on Steam to create a following in a group of communities. And we plan to release it for a set price of $29.99 because of all the features we have. So, we plan to target players that like fantasy and mythology, prefer to finish a game that takes months rather than days and hours, players that enjoy freedom of story, that like to roam and explore, they don't like restrictions in what they do, they have the power to create their own stories, and they are fans of character building, as well as general crafting and building.
Okay, so the question many of you may be asking is, why invest in us? So I have here a list of a couple different pieces of data I got from the top 24 games on Steam. That is the best sellers for 2018 for the Platinum and Gold. 7 out of the 24 are considered RPG, that is 30%. We also have 42% for open world and 33% for fantasy. This shows that we have a market to appeal to. Out of the largely diverse set of games on the top 24, these 3 are actually some of the most common on that list. So instead of players just widely enjoying the game, there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands or millions that deeply love this kind of game in which we are making.
So right now, you control the fate of
That's
us
good. Yeah.
in our own game. We hope you take a chance on us and have faith in Fateless. Thank you for giving us your precious time today, and we appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I've got a question real quick, more about the story aspect.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys have a hierarchy of beings that everyone except for the player character is going to be adherent to, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Well, and the god, like Lucilin, is not also on that too.
and Lucilin. So I guess my main question is, in a world where humanity is kind of like, I would assume, an last-ditch effort to survive because everything else around them can kill them, but humans are orchestrated by fate to not be able to do so. How does the idea of weapon skills and proficiency, how does that play into everything? Because humanity doesn't seem like it could afford to be out killing each other if they're being attacked by literally everything else that exists in the world. How does that, doesn't that make survivability an issue?
They don't fight each other. They're fighting the lower tier threats that are coming after them. They still have to fend off wolves, so they know how to swing a sword, and they would know how to have different techniques.
Oh, so humans aren't the only thing on the low tier?
No, they're not. There are
okay, there
yeah.
we go. That was just
Sorry, I could have clarified that better. That was my mistake. Oh, yes.
You had mentioned that the masters don't have a set location because it's procedurally generated.
They would have a set location, but that location would just be in a different place.
Okay. Because I didn't know because you also mentioned hidden dungeons and stuff. Am I going to be wandering around for 10 hours trying to find this master guy so that I can beat him?
There would be a quest, indication of where to go. Any other questions? Oh, yeah?
Can you give me some idea how the characters are customizable?
If you can imagine the Dragon Age customized thing, especially the Origins-esque or Inquisition-esque, you would have a slider. So if you wanted your characters to have a wider jaw, you would go to the other end of the slider. But if you wanted them to have a slimmer face, you would go to the opposite end. So it's a what's the word?
You get full control.
Yeah, full that's what I yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes.
So in I'm Luke Bonner. I'm a coder and designer for Gwythdarian. I'm also a computer science student at GVSU. So, the question. In a procedurally generated world that you say it's going to take months to fully explore, how do you plan to keep your individual location actually interesting? To keep them wanting to play and not just, I've been playing for 2 hours and I haven't found anything interesting.
Well, there's going to be plenty of dungeons and villages to explore within your radius. It's not going to be just this empty forest that's going to take you 10 minutes to explore. There's going to be plenty of mobs and many locations that are procedurally generated, such as dungeons. There'll be plenty of stuff to keep you busy.
It's not it's a gigantic expanse with maybe a few dungeons right here. If you can think of one area, there's going to be at least one dungeon there. It'll be difficult to miss. It'll be difficult to find a place where there isn't something to do.
So
If that's what I mean.
procedural, not random.
Yeah, but I just worry that it may generate too many dungeons that are alike, or you'll end up seeing the same template. It'll be fair enough.
You'll see that come out.
Oh, sorry. You have a
Go ahead,
question?
by all means.
So I have a question. I have some comments to make about your overall presentation.
Okay.
First, I would like to say you guys did really well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I really appreciate
We
that.
put a lot of work in.
Outside of that, as far as the game goes, before we get into talking about stylistic items, you mentioned that you are the creator of your story. Then you mentioned later on that you have the ability to have 2 or multiple players play in the story with you. If you add another person who's playing with you, whose story do you go by? Is it the original, the person who did the inviting? Do they create the story into themselves?
We can. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to go?
Okay, sure.
So actually, with it being a, what do we call it?
Optional
No, it
co-op?
was
What?
no. With the story, it was reaction,
Adaptive?
adapted storyline. Sorry about that. With that being said, anytime a player is within the story, they're affecting it. So if you have multiple people on it, each individual person is all equally affecting the story in some way. Does that clarify it at all, or I can go
Logistically,
deeper?
from a code standpoint, you have to have somebody who has superseding rights over something else. Otherwise, you have 2 competing items for the same database trying to put things together.
Then it would
Yeah.
be going by the host.
Yeah, there would be a slight,
Override.
override for the host being.
Because it is primarily their story.
Yeah.
So, Jim, can I talk about the other things? So, outside the game, I just want to say that when you are speaking, slow down.
Okay,
Can
sorry.
tell you were nervous. Don't apologize. Can tell that you were nervous a little bit, but that's okay. This is a big deal. You guys are putting your hearts out there to do this, but slow down. You want us to hear everything you're saying. Even taking a moment to pause to catch your breath could lay down a foundation for people wanting to hear more. Standing in front of the screen, you want to make sure that you're not blocking anything from anybody being able to see anything. If they can't see what you're talking about, then they're too busy trying to look through you. Make sure that while you're very tall and you're a bit away from the stuff, if you have a length of information where you guys are spread out a bit, maybe turn the screen so all of you can see the screen so that you don't lose contact with your audience. You want to make sure to also project out a little bit more than you think you need to. And don't talk at the heads, talk above everybody so your voice will carry out for those who don't have the power to be able to carry. Outside of that, you guys did a really nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I have a couple more questions here. All right, so you said everything is going to be procedurally generated. So I was just wondering, do you guys happen to have ideas for string values, kind of like how Minecraft does, where you can have a feed you put in to where instead of it being completely different every time, I'm just guessing that.
So you're talking about seeds then?
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
able to, use a world that you have used prior, or maybe someone else has.
Yeah, just because
Yes.
from a standpoint of it gives a lot of replayability, but it kind of hinders the ability for user input of I'm having a lot of trouble with this dungeon in X coordinates, but every other person might be that's a rock or a mountain.
There is
or
a default
tree.
seed, so.
Yeah.
Good insight.
Also, I had a question about you said that your choices affect the game over time. What if you don't make the choices? Does the game play on without you? So for instance, you meet your first quest, you go to the storyline, and you're that guy, that's a dragon. Yep, I'm going to go ahead, I will let it burn, I'm going to walk out to this field, I'm going to create a farmhouse, I'm just going to sit here and till my wheat.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so if you have a dragon that's destroying a city and you run away from it, that dragon will destroy the city and
Will lower your reputation in
yeah.
that city.
And
They'll
it
see
may
you.
come up to eventually attack your, farmhouse that you made.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. Apparently it does.
Yeah, so that means that the story, I guess for definitive purposes, it has a defined ending then, correct? So
Yeah, the
assume
climax would
it's
be the
defeat
same.
Lusalyn, and then ascend to be the only god, and now you are the captain now, I guess. But so like, is there an ending where it's not game over, but like the story ends to where you did nothing and then evil prevailed, or I guess not evil, but just like the gods prevailed, or God?
Not necessarily like doing your own thing. Like that's something we want to encourage. Like if you just want to ignore the story altogether, like go ahead. It might kill some story stuff. It might make it harder to complete. But like if you want to just completely ignore the story and then one day decide that you want to go back to the story, then like you'll always have that option. It'll just be a lot harder to do so depending on how long you've left it.
Okay, points to me. Really well done. Excellent work.
Thank you.
I would have led a little bit earlier with what platform you're working on.
Okay.
And it was single player only initially, because as you started this console game is a multiplayer, I didn't know. I knew a little bit because of previous conversations, but it wasn't evident during the presentation.
Okay.
When you got into the story, you went just a little too deep.
Okay.
You could have been better just laying the outlay of it, because there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't know. We just need to know that it's there.
Okay.
You don't have to, and this NPC does this NPC, it's like going deep into the comment system. We don't need that. Okay. It was interesting, but too much. It felt a little, some of the concepts you had felt a little bit like Minecraft, as has been pointed out, especially when you're building things. How do you envision that working?
Like the Skyrim Hearthfire system more than like Minecraft. It would be different.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like voxels that you're placing. You would have, actual preset
Do you have
objects.
minions that you actually create,
Yep.
like guards and
You
Yeah.
can hire
It's an
people.
interesting aspect to have a system that can create those.
So yeah, actually if you have like a lower reputation, maybe you pillage some towns, people might not like you, and they might try and, firebomb your house. So you'll have to hire some guards to protect it.
Good. So with that, that's sort of interesting. You said something that actually really caught my attention. That's the interaction between the environment and the combat system, which actually I think is really interesting. How you can leverage those two together to do interesting things. That indicates a level of physics that's in your world already, and now you're working with that, like to throw a flaming bottle at a bridge and the bridge falls when it's burned up, and things like that are fabulous.
Yeah, we wanted to inspire some creativity with how players want to actually, fight their battles.
I have some questions about your skill points as you were building your character.
Do you want me to move to that slide? Or?
You would not. How many gods are there? How many gods have died that we can become the entities of?
Right now there's around 12, but we're considering adding more.
Okay, so 12. So we picked 3 of the 12 effectively,
yes.
And then they have different aspects. Okay. Is there some sort of trade-off, or is there unlimited skill points? So if I play long enough, can I become the manifest?
No, you would get 1 talent point for each level, and of course, you can't, allocate them into every, every spot.
So what's my level cap then?
I would say about 80.
90-ish, like 99
89.
maybe.
So the question is, can I fill out the skill tree?
No, you would not be able to fill out the
tree. I have to choose somewhere.
Yeah. There is going to be a lot of choices, and which tree of each god is also another choice.
What about, does that link to the skills, like learning of mining and fishing and carpentry, and also
certain gods like
system and different skill points?
Yeah. Wait, are you asking about for the skill system if that's similar, or are you asking if the god power
I
is
have a
linked
skill
to it?
point. Do I put it into mining, or do I have a god power I put it into?
You actually gain the skill points for the skill proficiencies by doing that particular
So that's a
skill.
different system.
Yeah, that is a completely different system.
And then that begs the question: is the combat system a different system?
Yeah, so by using the weapons, that's another system. So it's mainly 3 separate systems with your talent points.
Which ties into our theme of Trinity.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Thoughts back there?
Yes.
Your story, from what I've heard, draws a lot of parallels from a game called Divinity: Original Sin, where you are God-woken. You try to become the divine, and at the end you get to either take all the source, which is basically magic or higher magic in the world, and take it all yourself, become the divine, or spread it out to everyone in the world. They all become God-woken, or just eliminated from the world. Pretty similar to what you're thinking for your ending, which is either...
No, actually, you become a god, yes, but like Fateless and humans, like I said, are completely different are considered like a different species. Like Fateless are not just Fateless aren't just fateless humans, but they are that. But they are considered like a god in its most base form. Like if they were just being born, that was what a god would look like in its infancy. Humans cannot hold the power that gods have. Like the average human could not. It would literally burn them from the inside. So you would not be able to like spread out your godly power. The most you could do for the human populace would be to end fate and make them the arbiters of their own decisions.
Okay, so that'd be similar to the kind of eliminate the source. Just kind of take away the overarching influence on the world.
Yeah, I mean, like, it wouldn't just be completely gone right away. There would still be some elements that linger for a while. So, like, that would be our like justification for post-game, where there's still like humans can't just go out and kill all these beasts by themselves. They still need your aid for a while. Like the fate wouldn't just go away instantaneously. It would just kind of fall apart. Like if you pull on a thread away from the what's the word? The tapestry. If you pull a thread from a tapestry, you won't just see everything crumble right away. It'll slowly start to like fray and fall apart. That's kind of how the destruction of fate works.
Guys, well done.